Hey guys, Toby Mathis here, and today we're going to talk about what law enforcement officers can do to protect themselves, especially if qualified immunity protections are removed. First off, I'm not going to get political on this. I'm just going to say if qualified immunity is eliminated in your state, that means that you could be personally prosecuted or pursued for monetary judgments by individuals who allege that you have committed violations of their rights. So that means that a police officer, whether or not there's insurance, whether or not there's somebody else who might be responding to the suit on your behalf or being financially responsible for it, whether it be the policing agency, but you are civilly, personally responsible. And that means that monetary judgments can be taken out against you or can be achieved by parties suing you. And just like anybody else that's in, like, for example, I'm an attorney, somebody sues me for malpractice, I can be personally responsible for my negligence or for my violations. So you are no different than doctors, engineers, architects, realtors, any other business, lawyers, you name it, veterinarians. If you commit an action, you could be pursued for civil compensation, so that somebody can sue you and seek compensation for their injuries or alleged injuries. All right. The reason I bring that up is because police officers quite often enjoy qualified immunity, means that they're immune from all but the most egregious suits, that they can't be sued under certain circumstances, so that they don't have to worry about this. Obviously, if every time you arrested somebody, you had to deal with a lawsuit where they allege that you violated their rights because you handcuffed them or you treated them wrongly, just the sheer enormity of those suits might become overly burdensome, as is often the complaint in the doctoring profession, surgeons especially. They have a high likelihood of every time they go into surgery that there may be some sort of alleged malpractice and injuries as a result, which gets factored in by really high costs of malpractice insurance and things like that. So, so welcome to the world of having to deal with lawyers and some of the BS that goes along with these folks that are going to try to. In many cases, they're just it's legalized blackmailing. Let's just call it what it is. There's frivolous cases out there where all they're trying to do is get the frivolous value of the case paid out to them in some sort of settlement, and that's what the insurance companies have to deal with. If you don't believe me, when you Google these things, frivolous lawsuits, they do occur. All right. So how do we prevent somebody from going after and taking our personal assets? Well, number one is you act and behave in the most conservative manner to make sure that you don't find yourself on the wrong end of a suit. Obviously, respect the rights of others. Act like a reasonable person. If you're a police officer, act like a reasonable police officer. But that's not going to shield you entirely. Obviously, there's cases where there might be a mistake, or there's alleged mistakes or actions on your behalf, or there's just ambulance chasing attorneys out there trying to make a dollar with the with the client. Some of you lawyers are probably losing your minds right now, but it happens in our profession. I live in Las Vegas, where if I drive home, I will see, literally, I counted it one day, 26 personal injury billboards on my way home. 26 in about a 15-minute drive, because the lawyers here advertise all over the place. Are you hurt? Are you hurt? Whether you slipped in a casino or an auto accident, they're looking for anybody that they can make an allegation because they get paid on it. That's our system. So, all right. So let's just be real about this, guys. So how do you keep yourself out of harm's way? Number one is you always want to give them the shortest path to getting a result that they want. So if somebody's going to bring a civil suit against you and they're trying to get money, make it very easy for them to get a small amount of money. Make sure that there's insurance, make sure that you're covered, make sure that you're allowing somebody to go in and settle cases for the frivolous value of that case, like defense value or whatever. If there's a genuine issue of fact on it, they don't want to go to trial and lose. On the same token, there's a value to them settling. So allow it to be settled. And the way that you do this the most effective, in what I always say, for example, in the real estate world, is the plaintiff is the master of pleadings, and you want them to limit the scope of their pleadings to something that's covered by the insurance directly. So, for example, if I am a landlord, I want to keep everything in the realm of negligence. I don't want to go into intentional actions or gross negligence. And how do I prevent that from happening? I prevent that by not making myself and all of my assets known to the other party. So they say, hey, I have somebody with a lot of money and I want to really, I want to go beyond the insurance and try to get to them personally because I believe that they have more money than is just in the insurance policy. Instead, you'll try to reverse it and you'll say, I want to stay within the insurance policy just for negligence because I don't believe this individual has a bunch of other assets. And where this comes into play for asset protection attorneys especially is you want to keep your name out of the public record. You want to go to jurisdictions where you can make that happen. And yes, it is possible to own real estate. It is possible to own your brokerage accounts, your checking accounts out of your name to where they are protected and they are not easy to find in the public record. It's up to you as to whether you want to accomplish that. That's something that we specialize here at Anderson. Something we do very effectively is we create entities where there is not a paper trail back to you in the public record. And I'm going to say this very succinctly, public record. In other words, somebody who you don't want to find your stuff searching for it. That does not mean that you don't let the bank know that it is you. That does not mean that if there's federal disclosures, that you're not making federal disclosures. But your bank or your bank statements and your tax returns, all of those things are not public records. Those are your records that are still private and that another party can't just go look up online and say, let's see how much Toby has in his bank account. What you have to be careful of is that if I'm not careful, for example, we had recently, I won't get into the names and everything, but recently we had somebody who was a prominent member of a charity end up buying 4 houses for millions of dollars and got some scrutiny because they could very easily tie her to the properties, and you could see it was her purchasing the properties. She had set up LLCs that were easy to tie to her because her name was all over the public record. So it was very easy for reporters to say, hey, wait a second, you're supposed to be doing this charitable work, but you have millions of dollars of real estate. Where are you getting that money? It's out of your charity. We think that's wrong. And there was some public shaming that went on from that. That's because in many situations in a state, your name will be revealed as being an owner in a particular entity if you don't take steps to shield that. In other jurisdictions, that is not a requirement. Can I marry those two like let's say I was buying property in a state like California where I have to disclose, is there a way to keep your ownership anonymous? There still is. And it requires a professional who knows what they're doing to keep your name out of it. And the only reason you're doing that is so you're not inviting problems into your realm, into your personal realm. Why is this important for a police officer? Because you don't want to become somebody that they decide something that I can take from. If I know you have 20 rental properties in like that, you've been investing on the side and you've been a police officer for 15, 20 years, or your spouse has businesses on the side, and I decide I want to go get those things, I've just expanded the scope of the civil suit against me to go into my personal realm as opposed to just pleading things that are covered by insurance or may be covered by indemnification, depending on your situation and the organizations in which you work. So if we want to keep all your personal stuff off the table, we just want to make sure it's structured. Number one, where it's not findable in a public record. Number two, we still want there to be an effective asset protection plan to where they can't take it. So where if there's a win, they still can't touch your stuff. So if I sue somebody when I use the example, it sounds horrible, but like you don't see too many homeless people getting sued because there's nothing you can get out of them. So you want to kind of make your stuff look like I don't have much to take. It doesn't mean you want to be homeless. It just means that when somebody goes and looks at your assets, you don't want there to be something in the public record where they can see how much you're worth really easily. You don't want to be broadcasting it everywhere. Hey, I'm worth $2 million, because if somebody's going after you, now they know what you have, and that's what they're going to use as their bargaining chip. Well, you could lose $2 million. I could garnish you the rest of your life, and I could take every asset you have. You can take things and place them into vehicles. There's things like asset protection trusts, there's LLCs, there's limited partnerships, there's statutory trusts. There's different ways to protect assets where even if somebody comes after you, that they're not able to take the things that you own. In other words, they could win, but they still can't take it from you. They can't get paid. So if I am an individual, let's say I'm a plaintiff, and better yet, I'm a plaintiff's attorney who's getting paid on a contingency fee, the only way I get paid is if I get money collected. So if I go after something where there's no chance that I'm going to get money out of it, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going after that. In fact, I don't even want to. I don't want to muddy the waters. I don't even want to give the insurance company, let's say there's insurance, I don't want to give them the chance to say that's not covered. It's really them there personally. You can go collect after them, but we're not going to pay anything. Like that's the last thing I want. I want to make sure that I actually recover monies for my client, monies for myself. They're in it together in a really bizarre way. I know it's, I'm not going to get into the system, but in a very bizarre way that they're partners in their claims against you. And you want to make it easy for them to get a small amount of money so it can settle. That's it. You don't want to make it personal. You just want to say like, this is just cost of doing business. And again, this has never been an area in policing. You always had protections. You always had qualified immunity. But if that goes away, which is starting to be stripped in certain jurisdictions, this is something you need to address. Other professions have been having to deal with it for ages. So it's not something new, but you want to apply it to yourself. So number one is we want to make sure you're not sitting out there in a public record and your assets aren't easily discoverable through public record searches. And number two, if you do get sued, you want to make sure that you're not in a situation where you're going to be forced to pay out monies against your will. The best example that we can give is O.J. Simpson. Even though he had a massive civil suit against him, he still does to this day, there's no recovery. He had a massive estate. They couldn't touch it because there's an unlimited homestead in Florida when he lived there. Now he lives in Vegas because he's on parole from his incarceration here. We have a large protection here. I think it's $575,000 homestead exclusion. And he had his NFL Players Union pension where you can't touch the asset and you can't touch the distributions. He's going to get those monies regardless of the Goldman's multi-million dollar. I think it's over $50 million. It's some ridiculous amount that they have against him, and they can't touch the assets because those are protected assets. And so you put yourself into a scenario where you have these protected assets. I know it sounds horrible. If you're responsible for somebody's injuries, go ahead and pay them, but you don't want to invite the issue simply because you didn't take the steps to make sure that you were protected. In other words, you don't want to find yourself, hey, I could have done some things, and now I'm facing a frivolous suit where they're attempting to take my life savings, and I have no defense. Like I am going to end up having to go defend this thing to the mat. And if a jury buys their story, the next thing you know, I'm losing everything that I've worked for. You want to make sure that you're putting an asset protection plan where they can't take it. And so this was just meant to be an introduction. Obviously, if you want more information, click one of the links to learn more about how you can put a plan in place. But if you are one of those people who you're concerned about this, or if you lose the protections of qualified immunity as a police officer and you're considering leaving the profession as a result, here's some ways where you can sleep well at night, where you're not going to have to worry by putting in a plan. And again, other professions have had to do this. It's just the society we live in, and it's cost of doing business. Again, I try not to make it a personal thing. You just look at it and say, hey, it's kind of like if for my rental clients, folks that have rental properties, if a tree falls on your house, you don't sit there and, curse at the tree all day long over and over and over. It's a tree, branch falls on and damages your roof, you fix your roof. What you have insurance for, right? It's cost of doing business. Stuff's going to happen. If the wind causes a tree to fall over on your house, you don't sit there and curse at it. You have insurance for those types of things and you deal with it. If you're in a profession where all of a sudden you could be subject to certain liabilities, you do it as a cost of business. You factor it in. You try to make it as unpersonal as possible, even though that's really easy for me to say and it's hard to do. You want to look at it and say, how do I get past these things as quickly as possible? Hope that helps you guys. Again, click the links if you want more information. It's not an impossible situation, and there's certainly things you can do to protect yourself.